formidable robot.
I've had a lot on my mind lately. Consider this event post. We all have our special little interests that we base our entire online personas around. It's something I'm definitely familiar with my shtick being almost exclusively based around online criticism alongside competitive gaming, like hero shooters and fighting games and the like. However, one thing I feel like I've always struggled with is discussing topics that don't necessarily align with my own interests. I've found it difficult to talk to people a lot of the time for that reason. One of these topics that aren't really my thing necessarily is old children's cartoons. Of course, I grew up with things like SpongeBob, Wow Wow Rubsy, Ooby and the like, but it's not something I tend to think about a whole lot, being 18 now and having a lot more to think about than kids' shows. This group of friends I'm a part of are pretty obsessed with them however, and while it's not something I can really relate to, I still find it fun to listen to people ramble about things they enjoy. I met this aforementioned friend group about 2 years ago, when I was randomly invited to a Discord group DM that seemed to have been active for a long time now. Around 3 or 4 years, I want to say. I was invited by a friend who I consider really close, and I still talk to them even today, but I was apprehensive at first upon being invited. I'm not really the type to enjoy being thrown into talkative situations with people I'm completely unfamiliar with, but strangely enough, the people here were really chill, and more mature than one would think for their community of baby show enjoyers. It was honestly pretty surprising to me. I was expecting to see spam of Gen Alpha memes and Roblox gameplay or some other juvenile shit that I couldn't care less about, but it wasn't like that at all. I was greeted with open arms by this group of complete strangers, and it felt really weirdly comforting to somebody like me who's mostly only ever had people barking at me for not playing an optimal support and whatnot in a game. One member in particular really stood out to me though, that being LeahTheBunny. According to her bio, she was a 23-year-old artist that posted her work on her social media platforms and Discord server, which I found pretty cool. She seemed to have a pretty sizable following too. Lee had a pretty distinct, and for lack of a better word, gooberish way of typing, complete with cutesy talk and emoticons and such. It's not something that particularly bothered me, as I'd seen people before with their own typing quirks just like hers. She seemed especially interested in getting to know me, but understood my desire to take things a bit slower along with the rest of the members, which I appreciated. At the time I joined, there was a voice call going on in the group, and honestly it was a ton of fun. We ended up laughing at a whole bunch of terrible SpongeBob horror videos, which led me to remember this one YouTube poop I saw as a kid with split-second pornographic imagery. Tally that up on the list of shit I shouldn't have watched as a child. Something I noticed though, was that Lee was completely muted, unlike everybody else. I asked about it, and she gave a pretty normal answer. Her younger sister apparently lived in the same room as her and she didn't want to disturb her, which I found completely reasonable. Far be it from me to criticize a living situation such as this. In the few weeks since, I'd become more acquainted with this group, and I distinctly remember talking about my disdain for the change from Not Into Nick Jr. and its shitty-ass public bathroom stall logos, before Lee popped in and mentioned this so-called ident for Nick Jr., starring its mascot portrayed as orange and blue bunnies. I found the ident really cute, and not too long after, Lee would post a series of really cool drawings of all of our group's members in that same style, only anthropomorphized and more anime-looking to describe it somehow. Mine was of a pastel orange bunny with glasses and a tweed jacket to give a sort of bored nerdy bookworm type look, to match what the group saw as my inherent nerdiness when it comes to optimal strategies in competitive games, my 236s, pretzel motions and what have you. Lee's was a neon hot pink bunny with hearts in her eyes and a slightly less saturated pink hoodie and skirt. Other designs that she drew for us included a purple cyborg bunny, a Saiyan bunny lady, based on another group member's favorite character from the game Senran Kagura, which I didn't really know anything about at the time, as well as a neon green street punk design that reminded me a lot of Lethal League or Jet Set Radio. Needless to say, Lee had really put in the work for us, and we all agreed to make these images our avatars. We were praising her work like crazy, and in fact this set of drawings was one of the first interpretations I've had drawn of me. It was honestly really cool. I came up to Lee privately to thank her for her work and basically giving me my own original character, after previously only using characters from games to represent myself. She gave me a pretty standard "you're welcome," and we began discussing the other things she's drawn over the years, which I never really saw a lot of, as I hadn't dug any deeper beyond her bio online. Most of the stuff she showed me was really cute, wholesome even. I remember giving her stuff lots of love and compliments, and of course she thanked me in response. Lee was really sweet to me during this time, and it was kind of hard to tell if she was just like this with everybody, but I still really appreciated it. I remember mentioning some fighting games to her that basically only I knew about, and she was completely down to listen to me ramble. I talked about some really stupid facts about the games I played, like how this one character in Persona 4 Arena is a walking talking spoiler, or some characters' parallels to others in the hero shooter genre. It really warmed my heart to see somebody actually care and listen to my rambling on topics that, to anybody else, would probably come across as nonsensical, or something that you'd need a degree in theoretical physics to understand properly. I asked Lee to show me some more of her art randomly during this conversation, as I remembered I still had yet to dig into her posts online. She was one of those kinds of artists. You know the ones, the kinds that draw heavily exaggerated body proportions for their female characters. I didn't really care about this kind of thing at the time, nor did I even notice, as she generally kept that sort of thing to herself. Reasonably, might I add. I was 16 after all. She knew the boundaries she had to set, and although I never really showed it to her, I had mine as well. Between all the members of this group, I absolutely grew the closest to Lee. It got to a point where we discussed nearly everything on a daily basis. We felt a mutual sense of trust that I rarely feel online, and my heart started beating right out of my chest when I saw her status turn green. There is a reason for this, however. During this period of time, I was a very emotionally vulnerable person. Having just broken up from a failed teenage relationship that turned out to be completely one-sided and faked to make me feel better, unbeknownst to me, I felt like complete shit most days and desperately needed some sense of love, or even platonic appreciation in my life. Lee was the only one I felt like I could depend on during all of this, and she was right there when I needed her. She was like a big sister figure to me. It was in that moment, when I explained all of this to her, that things started to take a turn. One night out of the blue, after a particularly bad day thanks to my family, I told Lee nearly all that I've just written down, if not more. I told her towards the end, plain and simply, "I love you." About 10 minutes later, she responded with a rather lurid image of her bunny character, kissing mine on the lips. Her character was significantly taller than mine, who almost looked like a child in comparison. Suspiciously like a child, in fact, contrasting the more adult proportions my character had in the original artwork she drew. She attached this image to a message of her saying, "Love you too, honey bun," heart emoticon. I was unsure how to feel, to say the least. I remember thinking that it was just her showing her affection, but even then, it seemed like way more than that. I wasn't aware of her having drawn anything like this prior, and even now, I don't know if she ever showed this to anybody but me, or if she made even more of the other group members. It pains me to admit, but I started to feel just as concerned as I did, loved. This forbidden sense of love felt so invigorating, like I wasn't being treated as a kid anymore. Like I was finally being returned the affection that I gave so often. I wanted more. I asked her to show me more. She showed me more. My stomach churns when I think back on what she ended up showing me, and what she said to me. How she began to refer to herself. The imagery she featured in the art she made of herself and I. The things I felt in response to all of this. The way I enabled all of this. I feel ill just thinking about it. The flags, the symbols, the way she talked about the both of us. The sexual nature of her messages and drawings became more and more explicit. It kept getting worse and worse with every message she sent. And I asked for it too, just for some false validation from my big sister. I loved somebody, and for the first time in a long time, somebody loved me back. I loved Leah, and she loved me back. She loved me. She loved me too much. I may never fully recover from what Leah did to me, as she deleted her account some time ago. I may never know for sure if she's gone forever, or perhaps repeating what she did to me all over again. But even now in the back of my head, I still wonder, was this my fault?